সন্ধ্যা আসসালামু আলাইকুম সবাইকে আমার নাম আদনান হোসেন আমি ফাউন্ডার এন্ড চেয়ারম্যান ইটস হিউম্যানিটি ফাউন্ডেশন আজকে বিশ্ব শিশু দিবস উপলক্ষে আমাদের একটি বিশেষ আয়োজন সংবাদ প্রকাশ এবং ইটস হিউম্যানিটি ফাউন্ডেশন নিয়ে এসেছে আমাদের এই প্রোগ্রামটির নাম হচ্ছে শিশু বিকাশ আমরা আজকের মূল বিষয় হচ্ছে বাংলাদেশের এডুকেশন সিস্টেম নিয়ে কথা বলা এবং আজকে আমাদের সাথে দুজন খুবই এক্সপার্ট গেস্ট আছেন যারা আজকে বাংলাদেশের এডুকেশন সিস্টেম নিয়ে কথা বলবেন সো আমাদের প্রথম গেস্ট যিনি আছেন মিস্টার ডেভিড ডাউল্যান্ড রেজিস্ট্রার অফ ব্র্যাক ইউনিভার্সিটি ওয়েলকাম স্যার and we have the second guest Professor Arifuzzaman is the head of the business school and Canadian International University welcome both of you on this special event and thank you so much for joining us and discussing about the education sector of Bangladesh. So I would like to request Mr. David Dowland to introduce yourself for a minute so that for the audience.
Well, I've been in Bangladesh now for getting on for 3.5 years. I went first to Chittagong and spent some 2 years there working at the Asian University for Women as registrar. And then I moved to BRAC University as registrar, and I've been living here in Dhaka since July last year. But I come from the UK, and I've worked in the university sector. I've been in the education system almost all my life now, working in quite a number of universities, large and small institutions around the UK. And it's a real privilege to come and live here in Bangladesh now.
Thank you so much, Mr. David. We'll hear more about your experience in the education sector. Now, we'd like to go to Mr. Arifuzzaman. Can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me here. And it's nice to share the stage with an eminent scholar like David Dowland. I have been in the teaching for the last 18 years in the university level. And like my bachelor is from computer science and engineering from BUET, but after completing that, I feel that I love more to interact with the people, and that's why I did MBA and masters, and then I started teaching in the business school. And as I was always loving to explore myself with new challenges, new opportunities, so I had the opportunity to work for all the top 5 private university, namely North South, IUB, AIUB, East West, and the last one was BRAC University. I was the MBA coordinator of BRAC Business School, and then when Canadian University of Bangladesh they started their journey in 2016, I thought that can I be part of starting something new and where we can actually incorporate the advanced education like the education system followed by the North American curriculum. So where the students will be having all sort of the skills and the attitudes so that they can make themselves globally employable. And with this hope, I joined there. And for the last 5.5 years, I'm working with this university. I'm the syndicate member also, and I had the opportunity to work as the director of academic affairs for 3.5 years also. And I'm very happy to share the experience that our graduates are doing really fantastic, and we are going to incorporate the the unique education system following from the advanced economies. And for the last 10 years, I am writing articles and I'm taking part in different type of program where I focus on the education reformation for Bangladesh.
Thank you so much, sir. This is like very impressive and such a wonderful way you are leading your career in the education sector. We'll hear more about your experience, and I'm sure there's a lot to take away from your words today for the audience. So we'll go directly to our event today. So my first questions with Mr. Arifuzzaman on you have been in the education sector for a very long time in Bangladesh, and you have been teaching and you have been dealing with the students. I'm sure you have experienced a lot of factors and a lot of incidents with the students. So if I ask you a very specific way that what is your take on the adaptability of the education provided to the children or the young people, can you share very shortly like, your take on this?
Very good question. I believe that our student, what I have observed from my experience is that, unfortunately, in our university level, we don't see the faculty member, they grow much in their career and they don't like interact with the industry. So as a result of this, there is a big gap in the industry and the academia. As a result of this, the education system has become bit theory based. So as a result of this, the students, they are not groomed up with the right mindset where they can have the adaptability. So, and we don't expose them much. But from my experiences, I have understood that the education system of the developed economies, where they give the chance to the students for first 12 years, where the students can explore a lot, they can do the mistake because there is no that type of grading system like the A-B system. They just only focus on developing their analytical skill, creativity skill, and when they start their university life, they basically, it become a very serious education where the students get the chance to actually work on themselves. So they give them the project work and different type of homework based. But in Bangladesh, I have found that this is not happening. So as a result of this, the students are not that much prepared, especially they are not that much adaptable. So I have found that they always have some sort of complaints and they want to have a very easy life, in my opinion. They don't want to, take the challenges, take the pressures.
So is that if I just add in the middle of your discussion that you're talking about the 3 points that I have gathered from this, like one is that they don't grow much, like in terms of what, in terms of their education exposure you're talking about, and the second one is talking about they don't get the opportunity to expose them or their skills or adaptability, or is it something that the schools are not letting them to do, or is it something that they are not getting enough opportunity to explore themselves? It can be from their home and school both.
Yeah, I believe that they are not getting enough opportunities because our students are very talented. But what happened from the school life, they are actually, the society and the parents, they are basically setting the dream for themselves. So unfortunately, the student cannot expose themselves properly, they cannot explore. So which is actually very important. Like for example, we don't try to think to develop their emotional intelligence. So their self-awareness level is not so good. So I think that most of the students, their treasure remain very much hidden in the context of Bangladesh. Because from my experiences, I have found that some of the students who are considered very poor at their school life, but when they get the chance to prove themselves, they are doing fantastic and they're surprising everybody. So I believe that they are not given the enough opportunities, and the university education, especially, that should be, that's a broad education. But unfortunately, this is still remain as a book based. So we have to go beyond that, because especially after the COVID, you have observed that the things have been totally changed. So many different type of business models are there. So that's why Harvard Business Review, recently they have published an article. One professor of Stanford University, he has told, in the coming days, no specific skill set will put you ahead. You just have to have the leadership, analytical ability, your adaptability, and you may have to learn something very much new. So the shelf value of any skill right now is only 3 to 5 years. You can no longer use it. So these are some of the mindset we need to develop.
I think you're very much right that there's a lack of the self-awareness that we are seeing these days. But definitely, we'll discuss more about the parents and teachers' responsibilities in the gaps that you have specified in your speech. So but before that, I would like to go to Mr. Dave Dowland about being an expat, that you have been working pretty long time in Bangladesh now. So what is your perceptions in terms of the overall education system of Bangladesh, and how you are actually dealing on your work when it comes of students' education?
Well, there are some dissimilarities that struck me when I first came here, but also some surprising similarities between higher education. I have to talk mostly about higher education in Bangladesh and in the UK. So one obvious dissimilarity is the relative time that it takes many Bangladeshi young people to graduate compared to the UK. So it often takes quite some years for students to graduate. And this problem seems to have grown a bit worse, and particularly for public universities with the session jam that's been happening because of the pandemic. So it means that Bangladeshi young people are taking several more years before they can enter the economy and society outside the universities. So that's one example. Another thing that's quite striking is how much more involved parents seem to be in higher education in this country. And I'm not making any value judgment about that. That has its disadvantages and some considerable advantages, perhaps. But in UK universities, the contract is very firmly with the student. And that brings me on to another point as well. The whole concept of there being a contract between the university and the student. So in the UK, there is a strong consumer protection law, which determines concepts of fairness, that students should receive what they've been promised. And again, we could have a debate about the advantages and disadvantages of that system, but that's how it works. But I'd like to come on to some of the similarities in the challenges facing higher education in the UK and Bangladesh. So just listening to what our colleague has just been saying, one of the cries I heard again and again in the UK from university teachers was that students would just say, just tell me what I need to pass the exam. I just want to pass the test. But the teachers would say, no, we want you to learn deeply and broadly, not just to pass the test. So it seems to me this is a cry we hear all over the world, and Bangladesh feels very much like home because there's a similar challenge in the UK. And then when we think about what's often referred to as the fourth industrial revolution, huge social and technological changes that are taking place and facing all of us. Those challenges face the UK, they face Europe, United States, every part of the world. So there's a common challenge. How can we help young people to cope with the challenges of such amazing social change? How can we help them develop the critical thinking skills, the resourcefulness, and the other qualities that they need? And some students respond much more readily to that than to others, but it is a common challenge.
But do you think, that has been, changing day by day, like the perceptions about what you are sharing, that the common scenario in the UK and Bangladesh? So, is there any changes that has been visible? Because you're talking about the fourth industrial revolutions, you're talking about the overseas education, even the students are going abroad for their higher education. I'm sure there must be there are some positive changes, any positive changes that you notice would like to share with us.
The British higher education system has had much longer than the Bangladeshi higher education system to establish itself. As I've said, I think there are many common challenges between the two systems, but one of the positive changes that I think I've seen in my career in the UK is the development of professional good practice in higher education. So now the expectation is that no one should teach in a university classroom unless they've had professional development in teaching and learning, and that strikes me as crucial. And that is something that we could learn from in the national context here. So there's an example. I think there are some good examples as well in the UK of industry coming into the classroom, of students going out to get industrial experience that helps them already to prepare for careers there as well.
But I think your university, like the Brack University, is focusing on the development of professional skills in many ways. So we will know a little more about this, but before that, I have another question for Mr. Professor Arifuzzaman. So, we're talking about the teachers and the students. What is the role of the teachers or the parents? So my question is where do you think that the teachers should invest the more most, and how can training and skill development be helpful for the teachers? Like, even sometimes it's very difficult for the teachers to understand, like, what are their capacity in terms of like dealing with the students, because sometimes the university give the policies that you can't cross the line, and sometimes like you have the certain incidents, certain events are there. So where do you think that we should invest more on the teachers, and what are the training and skill development will be helpful for the teachers?
Thanks a lot. Here I will start with a nice quote given by Dr. Nishad sir. When I was at Brack University, he was our vice chancellor sir. So he was giving a training for all the faculty members, and this is one of the fantastic best trainings I have ever had in my life. So Nishad sir, one of the things that he told in this training is that as a teacher you have to be friendly with the students, but you cannot be friend. So that actually puts some sort of line. So what I have observed over my from my career, the teachers it's very difficult for them to become very friendly with the students, so that the students, they should dare to ask all type of challenging questions. So which is not happening in the context of Bangladesh, and this is happening because our teachers are not increasing their learning capacity. So they have to invest much in their level. So for example, if someone is a finance teacher, they have to go through all sort of advanced like the education that is happening over the period of time. Because I have observed that some students in Bangladesh, whenever they ask some like the updated question, the teachers get irritated, because the teachers have a certain set of practice materials and all these things, and they don't update themselves regularly. So teachers have to be updated, and the teachers have to always feel that their students will do much better than them in their career, because they are more privileged, they have more access to the information. But I have observed that the teachers basically, they behave with their students such a manner that they cannot learn more from the teachers. But in today's world,
I think that's the point, sir. I was talking in the with the first question, that giving them the opportunity to expose their skills. I think that's very much relate to this. Sometimes even as a student, if I would say like, maybe I had faced some kind of difficulties and challenges to express my feelings or my thoughts in the class, maybe there's some set of like the guidelines for the teacher that we have to follow. There are like, in many cases, even in the master's level, I think the teachers behave like this, that there's a set of the thing that you have to follow. You can't go beyond that. So with that perspective, sir, we want to know like more. I mean, please.
So for example, I teach finance courses. So in my class, I have found that there are some trader who has been trading for more than a decade. So they know the trading much more than I. So I sometimes tell them that, okay, you please share your experiences. But this kind of generosity we rarely find in our faculty members. So as a result of this, student, they dare to ask the right question. That day I was going through one of the article written by Adam Grant. I'm following him like anything these days. He's the professor of Pennsylvania University, and he's considered one of the best professors of all time. Some like best professor Adam Grant. So he's telling that the students should be given the freedom to ask any type of question they can ask in the classroom. But the teachers, I have observed that they sometimes get scared. But I think that in today's world, the teachers no longer it's a one way of education. So teachers' role now has become, we call it that co-partner now. We say that the teaching, that it is changing over the period of time. 50 years back, teaching was like teacher know everything, student don't know anything. Last 10 years, teacher's role has become like a facilitator. Now in the classroom, students can know more than the teacher. So teacher's role has become a partner. So teachers actually have more experience and he's senior. So that's why he will create such a platform where the student can contribute. And if you look at the case-based study system, where actually sometimes the students contribute more. And in my opinion, I have observed that sometimes the students come up with such insight that I even couldn't imagine. And then I can realize that they are much talented there. And the teachers, I think the today's teacher, they have to study more, learn more. And the more they will study, they will feel that their knowledge is still not so much complete. So here again, I'll give a quotation that I learned from BRAC University. Akbar Ali Khan sir, I invited him for my MBA program orientation, and there he was telling that Akbar Ali Khan sir was telling that when I was doing the bachelor, I thought that I know everything. When I started doing the masters, I found that I know something and so many things I don't know. When I started doing PhD, I have found that I know nothing at all. So you see that in today's world, teachers, they should not think that they are teaching. They should always think that they are learning. So teachers, one of the most important part they must have is that they should be open to learning until their career ends. So when a teacher feels that they have no way to learn more, their career ends there.
I guess, I mean, that reminds me a quote that it's quite funny to say, like, I don't know what I don't know. So sometimes it happened with the students and teachers also. Like, it's very hard to. So if I ask you a very related to this personal question, that being a father, that have you ever felt that your kids is going through from this kind of challenges, or have you been ever witnessed any kind of challenges that he faced in the classroom?
Actually, yeah, I guess sometimes he used to give this sort of example that where he found that the teacher was wrong. Then I told that, then I have counseled him that, okay, my son, that maybe like your teacher somehow didn't know this, but it doesn't matter. Your teacher doesn't mean that he or she has to know everything, because that today we have ocean of knowledge, so we know only slice of that. And
I'm sure this must be very hard. This must be very hard for you to make him understand.
Yeah, definitely.
As a teacher, that teacher is not wrong, but you are also right. So I think that's where you are playing a very vital role.
No, plus, and let me give one simple example, Adnan. Once I was teaching him, and I was saying that actually my wife actually teaches him all the time. So one day I got the opportunity, so I told him that, Adnan, is it tough? He told that, Baba, please you sit for the exam and you can realize how tough it is.
Well, that's wonderful. We'll hear more stories and personal experiences from you. We'll go to Dave now. So, we were talking about the scenario of the Bangladesh and UK education, and we are trying to address the education scenario of Bangladesh currently. So my questions to you: what do you think that are the gaps in our education system, like being here in Bangladesh, and what action would you advise to fill up that gap that you personally think? And how do you see the vocational education as a solution, since you are at BRAC and we mostly focuses on the vocational skills from the university in terms of the professional and personal both? So my 3 questions to you, please.
Right. Well, we're going to have a whole program just on that. So,
well, we have the time limitations, but we'd like to know that specific from you.
There are some notable achievements in Bangladeshi education. I'm thinking particularly of higher education as well, but there are certainly gaps, and I think there has to be a sense of urgency about filling those gaps. I would say Bangladesh has a period of 5 to 10 years during which it really needs to turn the tide, and there are several things for it to do. I'm not sure whether there's a recipe to create a really good educational system, but there are certain well-recognized elements to put in place. One of them is about, the whole theme is about raising standards and quality, but one of them is about establishing a good relationship between schools, colleges, and universities. So it's often commented that even students who get high HSC results then have difficulty assimilating a good university curriculum. Why is that happening? So we need to bring all of that together. One of the great resources of the BRAC movement is that it establishes really good links between schools and colleges and university already. So that's a wonderful opportunity for us. We need to promote the professional development of teachers. We've talked about that already. I would say again that no one should be teaching in a university unless they have had professional development. and we need to see collaboration between universities and educationists right across the country to develop professional development programs, and not only for teachers but for administrators and all those who support higher education as well. We need to make sure that appointments are on merit. Anywhere in the world, it's a basic truth that politicisation does not work in education. It simply doesn't. So appointments on merit, really vital. Okay. Another thing, though, I think as well is to look at international good practice, but to realise that learning from international good practice can also mean learning from some of the mistakes and pitfalls that other countries have made in their own journey to improve education.
So, in terms of international practice, do you refer to the particular academic process of the students, or the university operation, the process? So, where do you think that? What are you referring actually international practice into?
So, a lot of this has to do with what we've learned over the years about the psychology of learning. So, many years ago, think about my own subject, history. Many people of the older generation were put off learning history because they were taught to learn what appeared to be facts, dates. It was a memorization exercise. Yeah. Now the teaching of history has moved well beyond that into encourage critical thinking, a search to understand what really happened. To understand, in a sense, you never quite reach the answer. You're always asking another question or seeing things from a different perspective. It's that kind of thing. It's fascinating to see how even the architecture of universities has changed. If you go to many parts of the world now, you see that the buildings are constructed in such a way that they encourage interactive learning and social interaction. So we can learn from that as well. It becomes a powerful thing when the architecture itself is changing. And then we've had the pandemic, and students have had a variety of experiences trying to learn online, sometimes good, often very challenged. But it's striking that we can use technology to help us to, in a funny kind of way, increase the personalization of learning. Let me just give you one example. Sure. Tsinghua University in China, one of the great universities, they're actually enhancing physical education online because they have ways of testing whether their students are adopting good practices in physical education. So their physical education of all things is being enhanced by online remote learning.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, that's I was talking about, you were talking about the technology.
Yes.
We have in the era of the technology, and the universities are focusing on the more in technology education, and building more technical or the tech-based education. Do you think it's very important to start it from very early level of the students, or there's a particular age should be there to go on the technological education?
Well, it seems these days that children are born with an instinct for technology, but and so naturally they are going to grow up from the earliest age with that. But in education, always there has to be a kind of balance, really. And I think Sir Fazli Abed, the founder of the Brack movement, understood that very much. There are so many things you're trying to draw out in education, but the technology has to be in service of making people more fully human, really. That's what we're trying to do.
Great. Well, so my last questions to Mr. Arifuzzaman, that, what are the roles, of a school to ensure the quality education in your perspective? I'm talking about in general, not for the university, but being as a teacher, where do you think that the school or the colleges should address the problem to ensure the quality education?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I think it's a very nice question, and I am working on this for a couple of years. So what I have observed that in our school, we basically teach the student Bangla, English, geography, this kind of thing. But these are not the outcome, actually. These are actually some subject. But the outcome should be developing their creativity, their leadership skill, their analytical skill. So I believe that the school education system should be such that where the students will have the enough chance to develop their self-awareness, they will develop the self-management, and they will have the empathy also. That is very, very important, and they should know that how to make the relationship great. So what I'm talking actually, it is actually covered in the emotional intelligence. So I believe that education system should be developed so that the student can get the chance to explore themselves and they can do the mistakes. Because what happened in our education system, if the student writes something, imaginary, he is penalized for that, she is penalized, so she will never ever try to do something new. But I think that we cannot be harsh enough there. We have to be really empathetic, and we have to let them try more, fail more, and explore more, so that they can be full of life, they can enjoy their life, but their actual hard life will start from the university days. So
Well, that's a beautiful word that you have shared, the full of life. That's what I've been following your work for for a long time, and this is very inspiring that you are actually experiencing people what is life, and how to make it more impactful and beautiful. So if I ask you in a very last question related to your question, that what are the contribution in SDGs we are doing as education sector?
I think that Bangladesh, I am very happy for the development that is happening for the last couple of years. Now we can understand that up to the class 3, now the grading, the government is taking the initiative, which is basically actually taking us to achieve the SDGs, and Bangladesh is well in line, and I'm really feeling good because now I had the opportunity to work with our education ministry recently, and I have found that they are very farsighted, and they are educated from a very great institution. So I believe that Bangladesh is actually marching forward, and I hope that the coming days will be great for our
Well, I believe so. The Bangladesh, the way has been changed in the education revolution. It's really remarkable. So, as an expat of working in Bangladesh, what do you think that the Bangladesh is achieving the SDGs, and how they're contributing in the global education? Because there's even if I'm talking about the just UK perspective, there's a lot of students now going for higher studies. It's become a globalization, a global thing for everyone. So, and Bangladesh is contributing so well. So, in your perspective, where do you see and how do you see that the Bangladesh is contributing in the SDGs and the global education system?
Well, the SDG on education, SDG 4, is particularly about social and educational inclusion. And I think there's international admiration for what Bangladesh has been achieving in primary and secondary education with gender equality. There are challenges to that through the pandemic, but a lot of progress has been made and can be rebuilt as well. I think the thing that I particularly like to emphasize would be that theme of educational inclusion, to think about all the people who still need to be included, indigenous peoples, for instance. Think about disabled people. I think the World Health Organization suggests that some 10% of the population of Bangladesh have disabilities. What a wonderful resource there is to be released if those people with disabilities could be fully included in education. Your own organization takes an interest in that. A few days ago, I visited a young man called Jahirul Islam, who is a young social entrepreneur working to develop a disability organization now called Team Inclusion Bangladesh in Savar. He wants to transform the way we think about disability. So there's a challenge for us. I think in higher education, we've scarcely begun to think about how we can make adjustments to accommodate disabled people within higher education. So there is a challenge for us to think about for the years to come. And if we can only address those areas, how it will complement what's been done already on gender equality still a long way to go, and on primary and secondary education as well.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I think, like, it's never enough, 1 hour to hear from people like you, Dave, and Professor Arifuzzaman. It's so much like insightful and fruitful discussion that we had. Maybe we will discuss, in a briefly more in front of the audience someday in the Canadian University or maybe the Brack University.
Yeah.
We definitely would like to organize some events where we can address the global education system, and it's very important for the students to also share this kind of the scenario and give them a real check about the global education system and what global is actually demanded in terms of education. So we are in the very end of our program now. But any last word or any advice for the audience from you, Professor Arifuzzaman?
Yes, my advice, I should say that for the educators of Bangladesh, actually, because that our educator, that they are actually dealing with lives of people. So when I'm taking a class of 40 students, I'm actually dealing with 40 lives, and the students care for us, and to the students, we are the role model. So my request to all the educator that don't come to this profession other than that sharing your knowledge. So so that is my request, because that should be kept as the noble profession. So this is my request, that be the teacher and that be the life changer for your student. Thank you.
That's a good advice. Thank you. Any last word or advice from you, Mr. Dave?
Well, Bangladesh is a happening place. There are so many opportunities over the next 5 to 10 years, and I really hope there will be strong collaboration between educationalists, everyone with an interest in education, to take up those opportunities. There's a really crucial opportunity to build over the next 5 to 10 years.
Well, that's great. Inshallah, we'll do more. Well, we are end of our event now. Thank you so much, Mr. Arifuzzaman and Mr. David Dowland, for joining us in this discussion. We are hoping to do more sessions in future. Thank you so much. Thank you. So thank you so much, audience, for listening us. And we will come back with more session regarding education and what are the challenges and gaps in the education system. We'll discuss and we'll try to find out the opportunities that we can work on, because Songbad, Prokash and its Humanity Foundation is trying to address the issues in our education system and the opportunities that we can bring and build for the children and the generations to come. Thank you so much. Take care. Good evening. Assalamu alaikum.